To make your text content as legible and approachable as possible, it's important to lay it out properly. That means applying proper text formatting to your content. To make this as easy as possible, WordPress comes with a ton of tools built in precisely for this purpose. In fact, working with text in WordPress is not that dissimilar from working with text in a word processing application like Microsoft Word. That said, in my opinion, all text formatting should be done within WordPress. The community is kind of split on this. On one side, you have people that swear by doing everything inside WordPress, and on the other side, you have people who swear by writing all their content outside of WordPress and then only importing it when they're done. I don't know quite where I fall in that debate because I usually write all my content within WordPress, but that's because I'm lazy and I don't want to open another application and then use it. And there are some benefits to writing your content in another application. However, when it comes to formatting the content, I always do it within WordPress because I need to make sure that everything is consistent with what WordPress wants. And I'll show you how to do that right now. We already created a draft, so now I can open that draft either by going to Recent Drafts here on the dashboard and clicking on it, or going to Posts and view all posts, and here you see my upcoming exhibit draft. So I'll open that, and now we can take a look at our tools. Inside the editor, we have a set of standard tools that you'll see in most text editors. We have bold, italicized, and strike through, and the different kinds of lists. So if I highlight some content here, I'll highlight First Exhibit and make it bold. And then I can highlight The Atlantic and make it italicized. And I can also pick a word here and use the strike through function. The strike through function is really popular with bloggers when they want to say something sarcastic and then they write the bad word first and then they strike through it and then they write the good word afterwards. It can be quite funny. Next to that, you have the list items. We can create standard list items just like we would in a word processing application. So we'll create an unordered list. That would be the bullet list. And it works just like in any word processing application. To get out of the list, you simply create a new item, and then you click on the button again, and you go back to the regular paragraph. And then I can make an ordered list. And then I'll click the ordered list button. And again, to get out of it, I just make a new line and click it. Now, on the web, in addition to having paragraphs, you also have something called a block quote. And a block quote is designed to pull quotes out of the regular stream of the content to highlight them. To show you how that works, I'm going to grab one of the quotes in here, and I'll put it on its own paragraph, and then I'll click anywhere inside it and click this quotation mark button. This pulls the content to the side, so it's literally indented from the rest of the content. And depending on the theme you're using, the block quote will now be displayed in a different way from the rest of the content, illustrating to the reader that this really is something separate and that it's a quote. Now, don't use the block quote for any quote in your text. It should really be longer quotes that need to be separated. For a regular 2-word quote inside a sentence, you just leave it alone. Next to the block quote, you have the alignment buttons. My advice to you is never, ever use them. That's because most themes don't really support this function, so if you use the alignment buttons, you'll actually mess up your layout quite badly. The only one I've seen used properly is the center align button, but to be honest with you, very few things need to be center aligned, and it doesn't really always look that good. We'll skip over the link buttons for now and go straight to the More tag. Now, if you remember the Frugal Bits example, on the front page, you have a story that kind of terminates in the middle of the story, and it has this continue reading button at the very bottom that takes you to the rest of the story. That's this More tag button. So if you want to create a break, let's say I want to create a break directly after the first list, I'll go and make a new line, and I'll click on this Insert More tag. Now you see WordPress added a line that says More, and this indicates that only what's above this line will display on the front page and in index pages, and the rest of the content will only display in the full page of this particular post. Next to the More tag, you have the proofreading option, which allows you to proofread your content. And then next to that, you have something really cool. It says Toggle Full Screen Mode, and that is truly what it does. You click on it, and you go to this distraction-free writing environment, where all you see is the text you're writing. This is great if you're writing longer content and you don't want to be distracted by all these other panels and everything that's around. And you still have some formatting capabilities in here. If you put your mouse up to the top, you see that we still have some basic editing tools, and you can switch between HTML view and visual view, and you can add links and images and stuff like that. But it's fairly basic because this is all about writing. So if you're an author or you want to write great content, you might want to click on this button just to make it as easy as possible to write. You could even hit F11 or full screen in your browser, and then all you see is your content. And then once you're done, you go back to your browser, hover over it, click exit full screen, and you go back to your regular view. At the end of the first line, you have this button that says Show Hide Kitchen Sink. The kitchen sink are extra tools that you can use to make your text even better. And to be honest with you, I'm confused why the kitchen sink button is even there. I think that you should always see all these tools, because what's below the line is almost more important than what's above it. And I'll show you why. When you lay out text content like this, you often have subheadings. And how do you add subheadings inside WordPress? Well, you put your mouse on the heading you want to be a subheading, and then you go inside the kitchen sink here, and you click on the down arrow next to paragraph, and here you find a list of all your different styles, including all the headings. So let's say I want this is an ordered list to be heading 2. I drop it down, I click heading 2, and it gets applied. If I want to change it, I can drop it down again, change it back to paragraph, or I can change it to heading 4, or change it back to heading 2 again. I also have underline here, so now I can underline a word. I have an alignment feature for align full or justified, which you should never ever use. And there's a color selector that I personally don't think you should use either. And then we have the paste functions. You have an option for paste as plain text, which will take any text from any text editor and just strip all the contents. All you're left with is just the text. You also have the paste from Word function, which I personally don't like because it doesn't really do a very good job, but you can try it and see if it works for you. You have the remove formatting button, which if you highlight an element that has formatting on it, in this case the New Yorker, which has an underline, and you click the button, it'll take that formatting off. This is great if you have an element that has compounded formatting, so it might have both bold and italicized and underline, and you can get all of it off at once. You have a custom character button, so if you want to insert something like pi symbol or something like that, you click this and you get a full symbol map of the font. And finally, you have undo and redo buttons, which are great if you write something and then all of a sudden you realize that was wrong. Then you can go back and just undo it. So now you know how all these buttons work on the toolbar, but I want you to walk away with one thing in particular. Pay close attention to the style drop-down box. What I mean by that is when you create subheadings, always use the subheadings. So your main heading up here should always be H1, and it should be in your theme. So if you make a subheading, it should be H2, and if there's another subheading under H2, it should be H3, and so on. The reason why this matters is because search engines actually weight content based on how you use these headings. So if you want the search engines to get an understanding of how your page is structured, you use these headings from H1 all the way down to H6 to organize your content in a hierarchy. That way the search engines will understand your content better and will be indexed better than if you didn't. Once you know the text formatting functions in WordPress, they're not all that different from those found in a word processing application. Formatting your text properly makes it easier to read and more approachable for the people visiting your site. It also makes your content easier to find and index for search engines. And like always, nothing is ever final on WordPress, so you can always change things around later.